Welcome back to another semi-windy afternoon here in Vasiliki. It's gone on into its usual cross-shore sort of wind. It's starting to build. I could probably get going if I could, definitely get going if I had a bigger sail, but I'm deliberately on a 5.6 S1 from Severne and a big floaty 133 litre carve, just to run you back through the basics of steering. And I'm saying back through the basics because this isn't an introduction to steering aimed at the lower level, the beginner sort of level. This is intermediate to advanced, reminding you of the stuff that, sure, you probably know, but this is going to bring it back to the front of your mind. And it might well hit a little spark as to why you're stalling halfway around your carve jibes, while your tacks aren't as good as they could be, or why you're maybe not pinching upwind as high as you think you could be. Now, as a beginner, when we learn to windsurf, we have this visual that you can see on the screen right now, which tells us that if I lean the rig to the back, the board goes towards the wind. If I lean the rig towards the front, the board goes away from the wind. And that's correct. That's how we explain it to beginners. That's the easy way of understanding it. However, as you guys know, as intermediate to advanced windsurfers, there's something else happening. It's definitely not just forwards or backwards. If I want to steer upwind, the rig goes to the back, it just stalls the board and stops you. On the plane and off the plane, the same thing. So if I want to steer upwind, looking around me for some space, the easiest way to do that, hooked in or unhooked, I've just unhooked for a moment, the easiest way to do it is to sheet out ever so slightly, then start to bring the rig down towards the back. Doing that, the board won't stall, stop, or just skew accidentally super quick into the wind. The board will progressively track up towards the wind. Sheet out slightly, bring the rig down and out and around towards the back. It kind of relates towards the steering around a clock video that maybe you've already seen from me. It's very similar. I'll put a link to that one in the description. To steer upwind, the rig goes out towards leeward, then around. And it's kind of the opposite to steer downwind, through the wind and towards the exit of your jibes. If the rig just goes forwards, whoa, I can't hold it. Let's try that again. I'm just going to try and put the rig forwards. Even if I'm really low, it's not going to drive the board onto the plane. It's not going to steer the board particularly well downwind. And most likely, it's just going to pull you in. So if I want to steer the board downwind, the rig has to go towards the wind, across the board diagonally, and only really a fraction forwards that brings you downwind. I reckon you can see from the various angles, right now the mast is tilted fully towards the water. That started while sailing across the wind, even slightly upwind if I'm doing my jibes well, I'm probably beginning upwind. Check for some space, steer the board by leaning the mast across the board towards the wind, not particularly much forwards, and that will start to bring you around to a nice jibing position. Now perhaps you're watching this and you're like, I know how to steer, I've done this for a long time, but probably, quite possibly, a lot of questions coming through is how to plane out of a jibe. Possibly, the realization that you still need to steer using the rig, not just your feet, when you're jibing, might make the difference. As I come into the jibe, the rig goes towards the outside of the turn. To initiate that jibe, it went towards the wind. As I come through the jibe, the mast is towards the outside of the turn. As it comes to the rig flip, mast goes upright and slightly to windward, allowing you to stop the board from skewing or hooking straight back up into the wind. That little action of the exit for a jibe once again. As you catch the sail on the new side, the mast goes up towards the wind, allowing you to then drop and push for your exit. That basics of steering is really key in our jibes. Initiate the jibe. The rig goes forwards towards the wind, initiate the jibe, the rig doesn't go forwards, it goes across towards the wind. As I come through the jibe, the mast is towards the outside, and when I catch the rig flip back up into the new direction, the mast is ever so slightly across the board towards the wind slightly, stopping me from accidentally skewing back up and into the wind. Now sure, as you start going faster, some foot pressure starts to come into your steering as well. If I stand hard on my back foot, I'll steer very quickly into the wind. That's exactly what happens as you're first learning to get into the straps. Accidentally, you're probably skewing up into the wind because all of your weight has to be on your back foot as you step into the straps. We counteract that movement with a bit of rig steering. The rig goes slightly forwards, slightly across the board towards the wind. And that's the key little action that I want to take away from today is, yes, the rig goes forwards and backwards. That's the way that we learn to steer. That's the way, if you ask anyone how you steer, they will tell you the rig goes forwards and backwards. But is it actually forwards and backwards? It's not, is it? It's diagonally out and across upwind, or to enter your jibes, to steer downwind, to get planing, to exit your jibes without skewing up or hooking up into the wind, the rig has to go slightly towards the windward side, like you're trying to bring the mast vertical once again, or even slightly beyond vertical. And actually, I'm now semi-planing. This is almost exactly the same thing. I'm stopping the board from skewing up into the wind by bringing the mast across the board towards the wind. That diagonal movement. Back to basics for intermediate and advanced windsurfers, or maybe, actually this is kind of new to you, maybe someone taught you the basics which were rig forwards and rig backwards, but you haven't learned the next bit. Whichever one it is, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you very soon with, I hope, some exciting news in the next one. Thanks very much.